This is one of those old-fashioned meals that reminds you just how good simple food can be. This Lancashire Hotpot is my take on a real comfort food classic. Tender meat, rich gravy and golden potatoes on top. It tastes so delicious and it's so easy to throw together. It's a complete meal in one and a wonderful family dish, and this is how I do it. Now I have about 1.2 kilo of lamb neck chops here, and they, in my opinion, are the best for this casserole. And luckily, they're not in fashion because they still cost less than $20 a kilo if you can get them. And what I love about them is the bone-in meat imparts so much flavour, but also there's only like one central bone. If you can't get these, and they're getting more difficult to get, you can just get a lamb shoulder roast and cut it into big sized chunks, or you can use other lamb chops. And you know, you can easily ramp the ingredients up in this or down depending on the size of your dish. And I just sprinkle it lightly with some salt and some pepper, rub that in a bit, and then I dredge them really well in flour, like really coat them well. I don't even dust it off because this will thicken the dish and produces a beautiful gravy. And you can use corn flour or regular flour. I'm just using regular gluten-free flour. So I warm up a fry pan over a moderate heat, and then I add a splash of olive oil, a knob of butter, and when the butter's foaming I add the chops, and I'm looking at getting some really nice deep colour on them. So not over a high heat, like a moderate heat, because I want to fry the onions in the remaining fat. Once I'm finished, I brown the chops in batches. And that's been about 4 minutes, and they got some lovely colour. And I'll brown the other side. And once the other side is lovely and brown as well, I transfer them to a casserole dish, and I brown the few chops that I have left. Now if you're left with a lot of fat in your pan, you can tip a little bit out. However, I'm not left with much at all. And to this I add 2 large onions that I've cut quite thick into half moon sort of shape, and 1 stick of celery, optional, but I had a stick there, a little bit old, but it does add another layer of flavour. And I'm just going to fry these just for a few minutes until they have a little bit of colour and they've picked up all that lovely flavour from any fond that was on the bottom of that pan. And that's enough. They'll do the rest of their cooking in the hot pot. When I was in New Zealand, I made one of these for my daughter and her husband, and they loved it. And they've got a really big pot, and I was able to really layer it full, which I love. And I'll do my best to get as much in here as possible. I put the onion on top of the meat. Now I absolutely love, and so did my daughter, carrots in this, and I cut them quite thick. And I just have like 4 carrots here that I've cut into sort of like on the angle, quite thick, and I just lay them on top. If you don't like carrots, don't put them in. And you could put mushrooms here if you like mushrooms. And then I sprinkle the carrots with some garlic, and I've got about 4 cloves of garlic here that I've roughly chopped. And then a good tablespoon of fresh rosemary that I've chopped small, or you could use like a teaspoon or a teaspoon of half of dried rosemary. And I'll move that out the way. And this is about 1 kilo of potatoes, and you really want to have like the same amount of meat as potatoes, and I like them sliced thick. Before I put the potatoes in, I'm just going to season the carrots with some pepper and a little salt. And then I lay the potatoes on top, overlapping each other if they need to be. And this sort of seals it all. I really need to get a bigger pot. Made it. And now I pour over 500 mils. I'm using beef stock, but you can use chicken stock, lamb stock if you can get it, or just veggie stock. And then I get a little bit of melted butter, just a couple of tablespoons, and I'm going to brush that over the potatoes. Now I've got my oven preheated to 180 degrees Celsius fan force, which is 200 to conventional, like 190 or 200 conventional, depending on how hot your oven is. Because this first bake is going to go in for 1.5 hours. And I'll just sprinkle a little bit of salt on those potatoes. Pop the lid on and pop them in my preheated oven, and I'll check on that in 1.5 hours. So that's had 1.5 hours in the oven, and if I get a skewer, everything is tender, including the meat, the carrots, the potatoes, beautiful. And what I do now is just have a look and see if it needs any more liquid. But there's plenty of liquid in there. It's good. Just because I add just a little bit more butter over the top of the potatoes, and I'm going to increase the oven heat to 200 fan forced, which is 220 conventional Celsius. I'll sprinkle over just a little bit more salt, and I'm going to pop these back in the oven uncovered now, just to get a little bit of colour on those potatoes. Now I love eating peas with this, and you could definitely put the peas in the casserole underneath the potatoes on top of the carrots. But I find 1.5 hours might make them a little bit too mushy, so I just boil some peas up. They only take a few minutes whilst the potatoes are browning. So that actually took an extra almost 30 minutes just to get some colour on those potatoes. What I like to do is put a nice piece of potato. Now these aren't crispy, but they're very delicious. So hot. Some of that lovely gravy. A few peas for a pop of colour. And if you want, just a sprinkle of chopped fresh parsley, if you have any available. And there you go, Lancashire Hotpot, so delicious. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this if you make it. I think it's really delicious, and you know it's such comfort food. And I'm going to have a plate full now and then go and have a nanny nap because it's my day off and I'm officially a nanny. Hopefully I'll see you again soon.